Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. Hey, I'm Chantal. I'm a watercolor artist and illustrator, and today I'm going to be answering your juicy questions about writing and illustrating my children's book. So let's dive straight in. I have all your juicy questions written down in front of me because I film on my iPhone, and I'm going to answer them. They're very juicy. I'm very, very excited to answer them all. And yeah, a little bit of backstory is that I started to write and illustrate my children's book after I sent my art portfolio to like 100 different creative agencies, and I did not hear back from a single one. And the ones that I did rejected my art portfolio outright, saying there would be no work for me. And so then and there I decided that I was going to write my own story and illustrate it, and that is what we are doing at the moment. So the first question that I have is, how did you know that children's book illustrating was for you, and what made you want to illustrate a children's book? And oh my God, where do I even start with this question? Let's start at the beginning, the very beginning. When I was 11 years old, I wrote in my diary that I wanted to be a famous writer and artist. No, two very important words there. Famous, because we have to inspire as many people as possible, and because it wasn't just writer, it wasn't just artist, it was writer and artist. Did 11-year-old me visualize in her head, yes, children's book? No, I had no idea. But those were two very important passions of mine that I loved doing. And so I was like, you know what, that's what I want to do when I'm older. Never in my wildest mind, my wildest dreams, did I visualize a children's book author illustrator. But exactly 10 years later, I wrote the script for Adena and her star, and the year later after that, I started illustrating it. Getting into children's book illustrating was actually inspired by you guys. I remember Nostalgia, and I'll put her up here, was the first ever painting that really went viral on both Instagram and TikTok, and I remember getting tens of comments of people saying, you need to get into children's book illustrating, you need to illustrate children's book, girl. You have a talent for painting children, and your paintings are so very nostalgic and would be so lovely in a children's book or a picture book. And I was like, yes, okay. I emailed my art portfolio to over 100 creative agencies, directories, publishing agents. Yeah, from there I did not hear back from a single one, and the ones that I did not want to work for me, had no work for me. So I then decided that I was like, you know what, people want my art in a picture book, in a children's book. I know this is something that people want to see, so I'm going to write and I'm going to illustrate my own picture book. So that's really how it started. Another question I got was, how did you get the idea for Adena and her star, and is it based off a true story? Literally, no. Metaphorically, yes. And although in some sense Adena and her star, the events and the scenery and the landscape, is inspired by my childhood growing up in countryside Australia and Kangaroo Island, and all of those magical feelings that we have out in nature is really captured in my illustrations, and that definitely is a very big inspiration. But the story itself would be very hard to be realistic. There definitely is this magical feeling about it, and realistically, would that happen? No. But in some sense, every single scene has been inspired by an event in my life, and as we are children, we really do have this big imagination and far beyond what reality is giving us. We see things happen in a different light, and we can see these magical things happening. And so that is that energy of our inner child, and talking to animals is something that is really explored in the book. I don't want to say too much or give it away, but I will say this. What makes this book so special and so different from any other picture book that I have ever read in my entire life is that every single person that has read the story, from a 4-year-old to my grandma who's 80, who has had a different interpretation of the meaning of the story. And I think that's what makes it so powerful and so meaningful, is that we can all read the exact same story, 5-year-old, 80-year-old plus, and have a completely different interpretation based on our life experience. Like the 5-year-old is quite literally going to take the story as Adena and a star. Like the star is a star. But someone who is much older, like myself, or a mum who's reading the story, or someone even older than that, is going to interpret Star and Adena's journey as something metaphorically. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful, that we can all experience a story and it has a different impact on our life. And I think that in its essence is something that I've never seen in a picture book. And not only are my illustrations like very beautiful and something that you don't see often in a children's book, especially nowadays, but the story itself I think is so powerful and is what is going to make my children's book go very far in the industry and be very successful. Another question I had is, Adena, your younger self. Yes, she is little me. She is based off my experiences in my childhood, and also she's based off older me as well. Like Adena at the end of the book is me when I have finished illustrating this book. I'm spoiling too much. Man, I need to move on, guys. You've enough spoilers right now. I also get the question whether I've had someone professionally edit my work, help me with the layout, have I had assistance? And yes, I have had 2 editors proofread my work, and we really only changed a few words, grammar, spelling, of course. And we did not change, both of my editors did not want to change the structure of the story at all, which gave me so much confidence in what I have written, because I'm very passionate about how the story flowed and I wanted it to be kept the same, because every single page has a meaning. Every single page has a story itself and a purpose. And so both of them said, let's not change the structure. It flows very nicely. Even though it's a longer story, every page has a purpose. And that gave me a lot of confidence in my work. But no, nobody has helped me out with the layout of my story. I think that's my job as an illustrator. I also had the question, how do I plan my pages? When I first wrote the script of Adena and a Star, I wrote it in like 2 hours. I was like, I had the idea and I had the message of the book first, and then I found the characters and the storyline. And I wrote it like in 2 hours, maybe even less. And I was like writing it all down. And as I was writing each sentence and each scene, I could visualize each page of my book. So actually just sketching out each page was very easy. And it's pretty much stayed the exact same layout as I'm illustrating. The perspective of course changes and the elements are added in, but the actual essence of each sketch from the very first draft is the same to what I'm illustrating, because I could visualize it in the moment I was writing it. How do you stay motivated with such a large project? Girl, I don't know. Girl, I'm dying. No, a serious answer. I can visualize the final book in my hands, and I can visualize every single page and how it's going to be illustrated. I can visualize the title page, and I can visualize like the little story that's going to be videoed about the book. I can also visualize the impact that it's going to have on people and the world. So that is what motivates me to finish this project and stay consistent. I want to be young. This is such a stupid thing. I want to be like young when I publish this book. Like, and for me, I have to be 24. You know, people say like, if you don't make it in your 20s, you can make it in your 30s. No, I gotta be 24, man, because younger me visualized that I would be young and successful. And to me, 24 is like, that's the year, you know? And I think it's also very important to have a deadline of when you're finishing the project. Otherwise, you're just gonna drag it out. And I don't wanna do that. I want this book out in the world as soon as possible. But I also want to enjoy the journey of creating this book. I also get a lot of questions about, girl, you are illustrating on the world's largest watercolor paper. How on earth are you going to turn those paintings into a book? Basically the same way you make art prints of really big paintings. You either scan them. Unfortunately, scanning would cost me thousands and thousands of dollars. And honestly, I see the exact same result with photographing my work. So you basically just make sure the camera, very, very high quality professional camera that is used for taking photos of art, and you just take a photo of the illustration and you digitalize that, you shrink it down into an A4 piece of paper, and there's your book. It's pretty simple. You obviously color correct it and make sure it's nice and clean. Another question I get often is, how do you find your illustration style? And honestly, I need to make an entire video on art style, because every single video that I have watched of people saying how to find your art style in 3 steps is absolutely like, because they just miss the most important factor of finding your art style, and that is what you want to say with your art. What do you want to communicate? What is your why? And I think once you find that and spend more time working towards really honing in on what you want to say in your art and what you want to communicate, then you can find your art style. I also get a question about like, how much does it cost? Like, how much does it cost to illustrate a book? For me, because I'm using such big paper, I think the cost of all the materials is around like $3,000 to $4,000 Australian dollars, which honestly is not that much because I'm illustrating over 2 years. Like, honestly, that's not much for like that. The biggest cost is the time it takes to illustrate this book. There's 40 pages and I spend 50 to 100 to 100 plus hours on every single page. The time to illustrate those pages is what is costing me, because my aim is to like monetize my journey of illustrating this children's book, that I can live to illustrate that children's book whilst I'm illustrating the children's book, to be able to publish it, making just enough money to be able to keep going. Because at the moment, I work a part-time job on the weekend. I do workshops, I do farmers markets coming up, I do side quests, I do commissions, and I feel like by the end of this year, I'm gonna be so burnt out and I don't have any time in my schedule to illustrate my children's book, which is the project that I am most passionate about and that I would just love to illustrate and work on full time. It's time to answer the most juicy question, the question that I get on every single post that I make about my children's book illustrations, and that is, why on earth are you illustrating them so large? Why are you illustrating them on the world's biggest watercolor paper? And I have 3 reasons. Number 1 is that anything you do bigger, better, controversial is gonna get you attention. And I want attention on my book, so period. Number 2, why not? Why not? Why can't I just illustrate on whatever I want to illustrate on whatever size I want to illustrate on? I just want to, you know? Number 3, actually there's 4 reasons. Number 3 is that I love to push like the conventional rules of book illustration or art, and like you don't usually see watercolor paintings this big, and so I want to be able to push what people normally see in the art world and inspire them to push the boundaries of art as well. Number 4, this is the most important reason and the number 1 reason of why I illustrate so big, is that I love to paint detail in my work, and I love to paint little symbols and recurring motifs and things that you don't usually see hidden away, little messages. And so when I paint so much detail so large and I shrink it down, the detail is going to be like magnified or exemplified. A lot of people are like, girl, you're going to lose all the detail when you shrink it down. No. If I professionally photograph these illustrations, when I shrink them down, the detail is going to be immaculate. And I think that's also what makes my illustrations so special, is the amount of detail in them. And a lot of people say, you don't need that for a children's book. You need your children's book illustrations to be more simple. And I say to you, I disagree wholeheartedly. I think that is what we need in children's books, is what we need in picture books, is to be able to have those really detailed paintings to inspire children to have a bigger imagination, to have more curiosity, to expand their brain muscles. I don't know how to say that, but I think that's so important, especially in our culture and society today, where so many young children are on screens and their attention span is getting smaller and smaller. It's so important to have books like this out in the world and to keep this storytelling alive. Thank you so much for, oh my God, guys, I'm out of breath, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any other questions that I did not answer in this Q&A, I will probably answer them in a future video, or you can ask them in the comments below and I will answer them in depth. Thank you so much for watching again. Subscribe, please watch all my other YouTube videos. It helps me so much in my journey, and I can't wait to see you for page 5. Yes, page 5. And dream big. Dream bigger than you're currently dreaming, because you can do it. Love you, and I'll see you in my next video.